All right, welcome back, everybody. We have another story, another journey, another narrative. And the thing that attracted me, and I want to kind of tease this a little bit, and Lance, hopefully this is okay, because I'm going to take the post that I was attracted to, and we'll clarify on that. But you posted, and this was what I felt was extremely authentic. You posted about an individual that was in a situation that could have compromised, and then they had to deal with that compromise with their family, with their marriage, with things that were going on. And I want to get into that, and I want to talk about that because there's a lot of things that, I mean, all of us are business people. We're all entrepreneurs. We have a lot of challenges with the business, but then we don't always realize what happens with family, with marriage, and how these things all tie together. So I'm excited, but that's what drew me to you, and I'm excited to talk about that. But, and I should say this to get started. I'm so excited. I'm already jumping into it. I need to back up here a little bit, right? But first of all, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for taking the time today, because it does mean a lot, and we really do touch a lot of people's lives. So thank you for carving the time out of your day.
I'm honored to be here, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah. So, all right, let's jump into this, because, like I said, I'm already. You can feel my energy maybe a little bit, because I'm like, let's go. All right. So first of all, who is Lance? And again, this is not like, I don't want to know what you do. I really want to know who you are as an individual. And we've got 30, 60, 90 seconds, meet in an elevator. So for our audience, who are you?
Sure. I am a rider of waves. I'm a deep family man. I truly, sincerely love my wife with all my heart. And I love following Jesus, and I'm learning more and more about receiving love from him every single day. So at my core, God calls me a rider of waves. And what that in particular means is that leaders face storms, whether it's marriage, leadership, or their teams. So my identity is to lead out of that posture in every single conversation, trying to help people navigate conflict or navigate a certain situation at home. So that's truly what I'm up to. Thank you.
So when you say rider of waves, I mean, that's a great visual. But are those waves like tsunamis that are coming in that could totally rock your world? Or are they just like regular waves? Are they 10-foot waves? I mean, I've been on the ocean a couple times, and I've seen 10, 12-foot waves. And depending on the size of the craft you're in, you can sometimes really. So give me a little bit more detail when you say you ride waves. What type of waves are you kind of looking at?
Sure. Sincerely and metaphorically, right? If you go to the beach, Honolulu Beach and Honolulu Bay in Hawaii, for example, if you're up by the shore, there's not going to be very many waves. But the further that you go out, sometimes those waves are intense, depending on what season we're currently in. And even me walking into this podcast, I just received from feedback from a client that was like, "Oh, that kind of hurts, but it's an opportunity for me to grow." Fallibility, right? Failure is learning, and so hopefully I'm able to repair and make that relationship stronger. So I'm not only riding the waves with my family, my wife, and those that I serve, I also am learning to ride the waves that actually just happened in my life too, as well.
Yeah. And I think that I love visuals. I mean, I love being when you say that. It just kind of gives such a clear visual of what it is that you do. And so I'm glad we were able to clarify that. But let's start with this question, and then we'll see where the conversation goes. But let's start with this question of, what did you think your business professional career was going to be like before you stepped into it? I know you've got a couple of different degrees and things, and we talked about that in the green room, but what did you think you were going to do?
I think the first time that I had any idea of what I was up to, it was out of a posture of probably more than likely joining the Air Force and becoming a pilot. Specifically, I had envisioned myself as being a pilot for the Secret Service. Between all the twists and turns in lives and really coming into more of who you are, I followed that path for a season, and it was well into my private pilot's license. But a divergence happened of really realizing, like, man, I am called to be with people specifically and intentionally, not only for their growth and development, but it really is more of who I am. Not that one of my clients is actually a commercial pilot for FedEx. And so not that that's not an honorable role, but for me, it's been something I've had to wrestle with of letting that go. And I mean, good grief, we're talking 30 plus years ago now at this point. But my first awakening type of a moment that I actually have it on my website that I talk about was when I read Phil Jackson's book, Sacred Hoops. He was an infamous coach, for the Chicago Bulls, and I was just drawn into the spiritual nuances, the spiritual complexity of how he served and developed his team. And as someone who follows in the way of Jesus, I was really drawn to the art of what he was up to. So it's not only being able to identify, hey, God was already cultivating my identity and who I would become and who I am becoming. But it was really out of this posture of like, you're not going to do something on this earth. You're going to actually become something. And out of that becoming, it becomes a gift for other people to receive and participate in.
So I love that. So let's actually explore that a little bit. The narrative that is pushed upon many of us in our society, and sometimes it comes from parents, it comes from a lot of different places, but the narrative is we need to do in order to have worth or in order to have value. And you just basically broke that narrative by that one statement of, we're not here to do, we're here to become. So if it's okay with you, let's kind of dive into that real quick, because I think this is a really key element. In fact, I was literally talking to a guy yesterday who was calling about this exact topic, and I know he's one of our listeners. He was specifically saying, I feel valued when I do. I don't feel valued as an individual. I only feel valued when I do something. So can you kind of dive into that a little bit deeper, and then we can talk a little bit. We'll see where it goes, but let's just talk about that one specific. When we equate value to doing, that's not the right. There's not satisfaction there. There's no fulfillment in that.
Well, being always precedes doing. But in our modern Western context, we've flipped the script and make doing before being. And in fact, if you look around our culture, we rarely ever even get to the being way of life because that's more mystery. And if you're not comfortable with the mystery, then you're not going to step into this nuanced perspective of becoming. But for me in particular, I mean, I've fallen into the trap as well. I mean, when I started shifting careers and learning out what I wanted to do, we get into the doing because we actually have these dynamics going on of relational attachment styles that we end up doing things to stay secure in a relationship. So, for example, when I was going into Lubbock Christian University to start my bachelor's degree and therefore go into ministry, there were two specific instances that at my core, I did not want to go to Lubbock Christian University. Nothing right or wrong about that decision. But as I look back on it, there was a lot of people pleasing involved, right? And my parents are great parents. It's nothing, ill intended about your parents, but we do these things out of doing in order to keep secure relationships. And so once we can break free from the mold of our false identity and being aware of all these insecure, anxious attachment styles, we can start to actually walk in a freer, more whole and connected and resilient way.
I love this stuff. I think this is exactly where we need to go to. In the relationships, because you just said this in regards to we do because we want to stay in a secure relationship. I would also open up the door and potentially, because you mentioned the fact that your parents were solid and they were doing it with good intent. What about situations when you're doing something out of training, even when it could potentially be an abusive situation?
I missed one of the words you said. Reframe that question again, please.
Yeah. So what about doing, even when you're in a situation that you said that you were in a secure relationship, right? And your parents, but what about when you do things and you're in an abusive situation or something that's very toxic? So I've seen this happen in a lot of situations, especially as you're defining your career, you're being manipulated into what you do based on the abuse or based on the toxicity of a relationship. Can you dive into that just for a sec?
Oh,
That makes
for sure,
sense. I don't know.
100%. No, totally. Well,
Yeah.
so your question is perfect because it falls in line with actually my parents were divorced at a very young age. And so that narrative got formed early on in me of you do these things in order to keep this relationship, like, right. And so my role in a family system dynamic was to operate in a certain behavior that either kept the peace or for me, it was really not having a voice in the system and just falling a shadow in the background, right. And so all of us are going to face hardships in life. Suffering is inevitable. But how we begin to look at that suffering and look at those hardships and reframe those wounds is actually how we become more resilient in the future. In fact, we'll probably get into this more since I'm going to mention it. Most leaders, high achieving, high performing leaders, CEOs and executives that I have the honor to walk alongside, they cannot imagine the future. They cannot get past team conflict. They can't overcome the fear with their wife in the bedroom because they're stuck in a former wound. They're stuck in a memory. And so, right, our creative, intuitive mind is only able to move forward in as much as what we have connectedness, resilience, and wholeness around our former stories, former wounds, former narratives of life.
Yeah. And there's another book that comes to mind specifically, and I want to mention it here and now. It's called Broken Boy to Mended Man. And it's a book that I have had a couple of individuals suggest and read and talk. And I was on the phone with one individual who ended up breaking into tears because of that and the fact of how deep that was. That dog just decided to go after a squirrel. But sorry for the inconvenience there, but that's where she's at. Rosie, hang on. Most of the time, she's just fine. So that's the breakup of, I guess we're telling her we got to shift gears here. So,
Doing life, we're good.
Yeah, exactly. So, I love this concept. So let's take this, what we've just talked about, this doing, this being. You said a little bit of awareness that you came to, understanding that you had to heal some of these. Is that the transition that you had to go through in order to get to where you're at today? And feel free to take this into what you're doing now and how this applies to the leaders that you work with, the CEOs, people that are entrepreneurs, things like that. How does this all apply to them in regards to your own life versus where possibly it also applies to them in their lives?
I think all of us struggle with figuring out what we're going to be up to in the world, the good that we're going to actually create. In fact, many of us are going to shift roles and responsibilities and occupations many times. But for me, I ended up in ministry for a lot of different reasons. One, I never felt called into ministry. I know a lot of people felt a sense of calling, but really, as I unpack my story, it was out of this sense of duty, out of this sense of people pleasing, out of this sense of attachment with people. And so, with any career, you oftentimes get in it because you have giftings and skills in that area. And then once you get good at those giftings and skills, you're like, well, what else am I going to do? In fact, I was working on my marriage and family therapy, 20 years ago, or 15, 18 years ago during this time. And I thought that was my pathway out of ministry. But it wasn't at that particular season. And so I continued down the pathway of pastoral work, great, sincere, noble work. I enjoyed it. But the whole time I was quietly suffering on the inside because I was like, how do I leave this work that has such a prestigious look on it from outsiders, right? It's like, oh man, that's so cool that you're in ministry, that you get to do good work in the community. And so there becomes this weird pressure of like other people begin to see you that way, and that becomes your identity. In fact, the first time I stepped out, I was so enmeshed with my sense of identity that I had a hard time transitioning fully into executive coaching in that season. That was an 18-month wilderness season that God was initiating me and growing me up and maturing me and reminding me that the path and the process of becoming wholehearted is not about doing, right? It's about like, how do you abide with him? How do you be in relationship with him? And out of that good work, the fruit of your life is going to be whatever and whoever you end up touching because of that.
So how do you apply that? So there's a lot of process there with what you were saying. There's a lot of process in regards to the doing, the being, and the becoming of that. What are some practical ways that you do that in your life? Does that make sense? Like people that are listening to us are going to be like, yeah, that sounds great. I want to be able to become more. I want to be able to apply these things. I want to know what it is that I'm going to do in my life. I want to be able to transition from one to another. But what does it mean, and how do you actually do that in your own life as well as with the people that you work with?
So it's simple but hard, right?
Yeah.
You learn to tell the truth, you renew the mind, and you begin to live from the inside out. For me, in particular, in this season, every day in my journal, I don't want to speak with absolutes, but almost every day, I currently start with what I call micro gratitudes. It's the same thing that I do when I check in with the clients that I'm currently serving. Hey, what's a micro gratitude of your life in the last 24 hours? So for me, I start with micro gratitudes over the last 24 hours. I typically write 5 down, then I transition into truth telling, right? This posture of like, what am I afraid of today? And what am I actually feeling about that fear? Because we've been told it's wrong, it's morally wrong, and scripture backs it up. Like, do not be afraid, don't be anxious. Like, it's a command, so don't do it. Well, the quickest thing that we can do to come into any healthy relationship, whether you're a follower of the way of Jesus or just trying to have a strong relationship with your wife, is to tell the truth. What are you afraid of? And what do you truly feel? And so I feel inadequate. As we record this, we're in the last quarter of the year. It's like, right. So I feel inadequate about how do I continue to provide for my family in meaningful ways that support them as a solopreneur. And so as soon as I tell the truth about that, then I can walk in honesty about, okay, what does it mean for me to renew the mind in a way that I can receive a new truth, or receive my full identity to walk out of wholeness today. And so as soon as I receive and renew the mind, I can begin to live from the inside out, no matter what may happen today. And so, as I mentioned earlier, had a small, difficult situation with the client, no big deal. But I started out of a posture this morning that I was grounded, secure, known, beloved in that relationship, right? And so today, at the end of the day, I can continue to walk in my true identity as the way He sees me.
So there's lots of questions that come to mind, but I'm just going to go down with what my heart is telling me to go down. So we talked about the model of the false identity. We talked a little bit about this becoming and trying to figure out exactly who you are. What would you say to somebody that is struggling right now with their identity? They have a deep desire to do more, to become more, but yet their value structure and system is based off of what you said earlier, like whether that is a secure relationship or with an abusive, toxic type relationship. How does somebody start down this path of one? I mean, you talked about renewing the mind, you talked about the gratitude, and this is all, I think, parts of these steps. But what do you say to somebody that's really struggling with their identity right now?
Sure. So let's just take the average executive CEO that comes to mind that is overwhelmed, anxious, insecure. They're thinking about the next decade. The quickest path forward is to try to figure out, where did that early memory come from? So, like, right, take insecurity, for example. You wouldn't believe this, but many high achieving CEOs are in that role for the very reason I described earlier of people pleasing. They people please all day long. They're bored, their team, and they're quietly not getting what they want in return, right? And so there's a spectrum of, like, how do you be super assertive and commanding versus this passive aggressive nature. And so part of this is helping walk executives in a wholehearted way, integrated way, of going back of, like, what's your earliest memory of being insecure? Okay, well, tell me about that. How does that affect what you're doing today? And how can we make that memory whole in a way that helps you unlock the future? So it's really just going back to some of the earliest memories, earliest narrative. And I don't really necessarily call this like counseling or therapy, because I can do this in a way that progresses somebody much quicker in one session than therapy, because therapy is spending nuanced times on somebody's trauma. Well, hey, let's talk about your trauma over the next 6 to 9 sessions. I'm like, it could be helpful, right? I'm not minimizing that, but I'm just sharing out of my own experience and some of the work that I'm currently doing. There's a lot more wholeness and connectedness that can happen, and they're able to move into the future with a new creative energy.
Yeah. And I love that concept of being able to just take that one scenario and focus on that and say, okay, let's see how we can fix that one scenario. Here's something else that I've seen too inside of this. And I want to, I've seen this across all men and some women as well, not just executives, but there's a lot in there. We have, as leaders, created a persona or face, personality, whatever you want to call it. We've created this personality that we've introduced to the world, to our friends, to our business. And it takes a lot of energy to maintain that, even though it's not necessarily as who we are. So some people, and from the conversation that I've had, there's been a lot of talk about how do we get back to authentic personal, taking off that mask. Because a lot of us, like you mentioned, a lot of us do live with some of these pains and some of this stuff that we're dragging forward into either our relationships at home or into our businesses. How do we start to crack that mask and build relationships with who we are, who we were called to be, who we are authentically? I'm sorry, I'm asking like these
No,
odd questions and these
yeah,
things.
you're great. These are great questions. In particular, it's just naming, what are you afraid of? What's the fear? And as soon as you have a leader that names their fear, all of a sudden the room is going to take a deep sigh of relief. I mean, I'm even currently doing this with one of my leadership teams, Chick-fil-A owner operator, and his directors. Some of the work around this of helping them have an imaginative mind and creative mind is one of our sessions was like, what are you afraid of? Right. And he knew to go first. And so he shared what he was afraid of. So unless we can build some sense of authenticity in us, we can't really expect or have relationship reciprocate authenticity as well. Um, Vulnerability is one of these tricky words, because it's this aspect of, if I share this, I'm afraid of sharing it with you because you could come back and wound me if you don't receive it well. Right. And so vulnerability, people hear the word and you're like, well, what is that? Like, right. I just think it's just like, well, tell me the truth. Like, what are you afraid of? Right. What do you truly feel right now? And the quicker that you do that, we can begin to have connected and whole relationships.
And I mean, I know the benefit of those whole relationships, but just give us the why do we want those? For people that maybe have not experienced a whole relationship, why is it so key? What does it do for you?
The short of it would be, I don't know the statistics, but they're out there. One, you could look at Harvard Business Review and do a Google search over the concept of flourishing that they've been researching the last several years. You could go back to 2010, 2011, when a lot of researchers started to research the deep impact on social media and these devices that we hold. Almost everybody that I talk to have layers of loneliness that they're dealing with, um, and we're creating that. It's not that we're lonely; we have created such a frantic lifestyle that we don't have any margins to have meaningful relationships. I mean, most leaders, most families that I know, they're going, 12, 14 hours a day nonstop, and they do that every single day. And one of the things I particularly hear right now as we record this, it's October, it's conference season, which means it's also football season, it's volleyball season, and right. So you're working, and a lot of these families have chosen activities that they want to support their kids in. Those are great endeavors, but they come with a cost. They come with a trade, and so at some point you're going to have to choose, what are we going to sacrifice, what are we going to give up to have margin in our life so that we can choose to have connected and whole relationships if you really want to flourish in life. And so that would be my first, thought or suggestion for our family. Years ago, we started down the pathway of homeschooling, and that's created a lot of margin in our calendars to choose things that are different from the culture around us. And that's not going to be for everybody. That's okay. But you got to figure out what your values are and come in alignment with those in a way that lines up with the behavior, with the outcomes that you actually want. Because the hamster wheel and the frantic culture that we're on is not working.
Yeah. All right. So there's a lot of other topics I want to hit, but I really want to give us a chance to talk about this one or two things here. First of all, what are the keys to maintain both the business as well? And you mentioned margin, and maybe we could expand a little bit on that, but what are the keys to be able to have both the business be successful and your home family life be successful? And what is the importance of keeping those two things relatively on the same scale as far as being healthy? And I'll let you explain or how you want to dive into that.
You have to know the scoreboard, right? Like, what are you actually measuring in both of those environments? If you don't have a scoreboard, then you have no way of really knowing if you're winning in either one of those realms. And so, for example, as our family unit and as our ecosystem, we have values that we operate by. One of those values is living an adventure-based lifestyle, right? And so we try to choose activities, hobbies that line up with adventure-based things, right? And we're not talking every day, but as soon as we look at that value, then we can come in alignment with a behavior that allows us to move in that direction, right? So we do these things really, really well at work, but we don't really give them enough credence when it comes to what we're doing at home, which keeps us on this. Well, we wake up and next thing you know, our kids are seniors and we're like, man, did I do what I wanted to do with them, right? And so we feel that pressure even right now. Our oldest is a 15-year-old, and so we're navigating. Okay, this window of time, this season is closing in. How do we come in alignment with the values and behaviors that we want to see the most? And so if you don't have a scoreboard,
I was
you
going to
don't
say
know
that.
where you're headed.
Yeah, that's the key, is that scoreboard. So how do you create, because obviously the scoreboard is based off the values, things that you've created. How do you create those values, or when did you create those values? Because I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of individuals that are like, oh my goodness, you're right. I've created values, a mission statement, all the other kinds of stuff for my business, but I've never done that for my home. Where do you start?
Yep. So we've done this two different times in our family. One was probably about 8 years ago. But I'll talk about the most recent that we did, I believe earlier this year, might have been 18 months ago, is that I said, hey, this is going to be clunky. I said, but I feel like as the leader of our home that we need to kind of come into agreement of what we're up to this season, right? And so I just kind of facilitated and guided the process during dinner. It took about a month. And sometimes we're like, well, did we ever complete that? Because it's not like hanging on the wall. I mean, I have it in a document, but it's something that I printed out like 2 weeks ago and just set it on the kitchen table, just as a simple reminder, right? But what begins to happen is that it's Thursday night, right? So for me, I can choose going and playing pickleball with my family because we have that lifestyle and that freedom, right? But it also means that we have aligned our lifestyle and disciplines and habits in a way that when I wake up in the morning, my family sees me in the Word. And I'm not doing this out of a posture of like, oh, will you see me? But I'm doing it out of a posture of modeling the behavior that I want, modeling the desired outcome. And so therefore, everybody else in the family, that's the first thing that they do when they get up, because I've been modeling that behavior and that discipline for a long time. It's the same is true in our health and wellness. I mean, have almost 2,000 logged workouts on an app because that's a lifestyle that I've chosen. And so if you don't have a sense of really discipline, right? And Jocko Willick's famous quote, discipline does equal freedom, right? And so it's this nuanced behaviors and discipline and values of really telling yourself the truth. And the last thing I'll say about this, I call this the alarm clock principle. If you really want to come out in alignment with yourself, the first thing to do is like, how many times are you pushing the snooze button in the morning? It's not right or wrong. This is not a right or wrong metric, but is this a reoccurring behavior in your life that you sincerely push the snooze 3 times? Well, change that. Like, do a different behavior in a way that you get the outcome that you actually want, and wake up when the alarm goes off the first time. So that's one posture of telling the truth, that if you can do that from the beginning of your day, it sets you up for success the rest of the day.
But I love that it comes back to that value of telling the truth. I mean, like, it all seems to come back to that one core element of, if you are telling the truth in what you're doing and being authentic in what you're afraid of. It's been the theme underlying almost everything that we've talked about today. You have to be truthful in what you're afraid of. You have to be truthful in what you value. You have to be truthful in setting up that scoreboard. Am I wrong? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that right?
It sounds too simple when you say it that way. But I think, Tim, the challenge is that we don't have. I personally have never had a good framework of telling the truth.
Yeah,
because it's always been modern. We've always heard it from a modern way of, well, I'm going to tell you the truth, and the truth is going to set you free, and it's going to be offensive, and it's going to be blunt, and I'm going to come after you, right? No, the truth is just owning what's going on inside of you, right? And so the quicker you can get there, the quicker other people can come around you and have those strong relationships as well.
Yeah. No, I totally hear you on that. Wow, there's a lot of cool things, but let me, because we're going to have to wind down here, but what would be the one thing that you would want somebody to walk away with from today's conversation? I know we were kind of all over the place, but if we could narrow it down and say, okay, this is the thing that you really need to make sure you pay attention to, what is that one thing?
Pay attention to your body in a way that you notice your breathing. Our body will tell us the truth of what's going on. But one of the practices that I enjoy asking the guys during our sessions is like, hey, do you even notice your butt in the chair right now? Do you even notice your feet on the floor? Like, do you even notice like your breathing? And so we'll take a pause, and we'll do some breathing exercises. We'll take a pause, and we'll just sit in silence, for 30 seconds, 90 seconds. And so the simple practices really are an art. They are a discipline. But that would be the gift that I would offer, is like, just pay attention to your body, like, right. Just even as we're talking, I don't know if this is gonna be audio, video, but like, just put your hands over your heart as you're listening to this, and like just come into feeling like, who are you in this moment? What has been helpful or useful today as you listen? Like, do you realize that breath that you just now had is truly a gift? It's a miracle, and it's a mystery. Like, man, just sit in that and relish in that gift. And allow your body to become whole and connected in a way that you can show up in powerful ways for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And how can people get in contact with you? What's the best way to connect? I know we connected on LinkedIn, but I'm sure that there's other ways to connect as well.
So the best way is just website, lantzhoward.com. If you're listening, make sure you spell it the right way, LANTZ. Howard.com is the best place to find me. I'd be honored for you to go to Wholehearted Leadership. I've hosted Dr. Henry Cloud, John Eldridge, Patrick Delancioni, and a lot of well-known leaders, Navy SEALs. Dr. John Deloney there, subscribe as well. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I post almost daily content that encourages you in your marriage and your leadership.
That's just awesome. Well, thank you, Lance, for attending. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here. I appreciate this so much. This was a little bit different, and that's good, though. I mean, sometimes we need different. We need to have kind of a shake-up in regards to having conversations just about our lives. And the theme today, especially about being truthful in what we're doing and becoming, rather than just the focus on what we do. So again, thank you for taking the time today.
My pleasure, Tim. Thank you.
All right. So those listening, make sure that you check us out. We actually got multiple things, both on the YouTube. You can find us there, but to be able to see some of the video stuff, some really cool things going on that way. But until next time, keep writing and crafting your story, because it's important. It's necessary, and you have value with just who you are.